Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. Today we have another Teen Wolf recap review for you, and this is on Teen Wolf Season 6, Episode 2, titled Superposition. And when I say we, I mean we. Yes, we. This is my little partner in crime, always watches Teen Wolf. She has already laid claims to Peter, in case people wonder. So let's talk about this season. We have a lot to go through. This was a very, I feel, important episode. And let's just jump right in. So where do we start in this episode? Well, there's like a ton of Ghost Riders, and I did not know that. I don't know why, like in my mind, I just thought it was going to be like 4, 5. Given that like in the trailers that's all you see, but in this episode we see there's practically a little legion of them, and there's a lot, and they're racing on the field of the lacrosse field or whatever, and Scott feels something, so we know that there's something off, like supernaturally they can feel it. So this, I believe, is the first episode ever in the history of Teen Wolf that Stiles is not in the show. His presence was missed. We all felt it very strongly, but the show went on, and it was a pretty great episode. I do have maybe like 1 or 2 things that I'll say is not really my particular favorite, but we'll get to that when the time comes. Quick little quip here. This one is here too. This one here claims Corey, and this one is actually not the one I just showed. This one's a little tinier. So we'll put her down, and we'll get right back into the episode. So the first time we see Mason and Corey in this episode, they're studying. It's late, like 9 o'clock at night. They're at the school. Mason, who is really smart, is tutoring a group of students. A lot of crazy things happen, this and that. So what it ends up turning into is Liam and Mason go into the library, and Mason, because he's not supernatural, can't see with supernatural eyes. However, Corey can, and when he looks through his supernatural eyes, he's able to see the Ghost Riders. Now, when he sees the Ghost Riders, him and Mason, it just so happens that the Ghost Riders are strangling, like with a rope, like they're hanging one of the students by his neck. And eventually, I presume they take him. So what happens? Scott and Liam and Mason and Corey, they meet up, and then they all of a sudden can't remember what they seen, but they know they seen the Ghost Riders. Interesting thing is, they remember the Ghost Riders. They remember things are happening, but they don't remember Stiles, and now they don't remember the student who was taken by the Ghost Riders. All they can remember is seeing the Ghost Riders. So what happens after that? We'll go back to Mason and all of them. So, cut to a new scene. Malia and Nathan, Nathan being a new character, and he and Malia share an intimate scene. Really funny scene. You know, there's not really much can be said about the scene other than the fact that Nathan turns to the corner of the room, and he sees the shackles and the chains that Stiles would use to put on Malia to help her from shape-shifting and from losing control during the full moons and all that. So he sees that, he questions, and she refuses to answer. Okay, so that's that. Let's jump to another scene. Lydia, this is an important scene. Lydia is awake at night. She's in her bed. She's screaming because she hears somebody's voice. We know it's the voice of Stiles, but she doesn't know whose voice it is. But she does hear a really loud train sound. I don't know why she's hearing a train sound. I'm assuming we're gonna find out why later. But that's what she hears. Her mom goes in. Turns out her mom never heard anything. And again, this is just a premonition or something that Lydia's feeling. So later on in the episode we find out more about that sound, and we find out more about the voices she's hearing. So there's an important scene, I feel, is when Scott's in his room and he's looking at his collage board that's up on his wall, and he noticed something's missing. He gets up to go and look, and then he sees on the floor there's a picture, and it was the picture they took on senior the portrait day. And in that picture, where it had Malia and Lydia and Stiles and Scott, Stiles is missing, but for some reason Scott feels like an unrest, and he's looking at this picture and he sees something has to be missing, but he can't place what. We're in the class now. Malia and Lydia are in class. Malia is highlighting as per usual her book, and she's going through with a yellow highlighter, and then she comes upon a word that says style. She stops and she looks at it, looks confused, and then she gets her red highlighter. Now remember, with Malia, yellow highlighter means she got it, and then her other highlighters mean she's working on it, and then the red highlighter means she doesn't know, she has no clue. So that's what she used, the red highlighter, put it on the word style, and then continued on with the yellow highlighter. Now right next to her, or right behind her, or whatever, Lydia is in her chair, and class is starting, they're doing their work or whatever, and then Lydia looks to the side of her and she sees a woman dressed in a doctor's clothes. She's sitting next to her, and Lydia calls to her, and the woman looks at her, and then Lydia starts hearing that train sound again, and she's like it's hurting her ears again, and it's kind of like reminiscent of last season when Lydia was hearing like different sounds and it was hurting her ears. So this is the same thing now, but now she's hearing a train sound, and she starts panicking in class and she kind of freaks out. So fast forward a little later on in the episode, Lydia is outside of her class. She's doing whatever she has to do, and she's somehow transported back in her mind to that night that Stiles went missing, and she goes and she's like hearing his voice, and she's being led as though he's pulling her the exact same way that night, and she's running as though she was running to the Jeep with Stiles, and as it turns out, Malia grabs her and it brings her back to reality, and it's actually the same day of class. And it's morning, it's not that night, and Lydia, in fact, almost ran into traffic, and Malia saved her right there. So things are getting a little weird with Lydia, and I'm assuming this has to do with the fact that she's a banshee and she can have premonitions about other supernatural things that some people don't have the ability to. So what else is going on? Well, Scott goes to Dean and he explains to him what's been going on, how he's been feeling, that something might be missing. Dean explains to him that he's never heard of ghost writers altering memory or changing memory, but he alludes to the fact that Scott's subconscious might be trying to remember something. And he compares it to, I believe he called it missing leg syndrome or something like that, that when Scott is feeling like something's there even though it's not. So he instructs Scott to let his subconscious take over, and by doing so he tells him to go to sleep. And we see that when Scott does so, he ends up waking up in the woods, the same woods that he got bit and turned into a wolf, and we're gonna have to find out later what goes on with that. So what else is happening? Well, Malia wakes up in the middle, same night, she wakes up in the middle of the night to find out that she tried to turn her room into a coyote's den. So she's basically kind of not in control of her powers again. Her so-called anchor, which was Stiles, isn't there, or it doesn't exist in reality right now. So to an extent she doesn't have the grounding that she had when Stiles was there, and she looks at the shackles that Stiles had put on her, and she's trying to figure something out. What that is, I mean, she doesn't know, but it's Stiles. We know it's Stiles, but we're gonna have to figure out what's gonna happen with this story arc as well. She calls up, they cut from that scene to another, and she's at the school, and she's in like the basement or something. I don't know. I think she's in the basement. I'm not sure where she's at exactly. I think it's a school though. But she has the shackles, and she's trying to shackle herself up, she calls upon Lydia. Okay, so Lydia gets there. She's telling Lydia that somebody must have helped her, because Lydia couldn't have helped her that day at the lake house. Scott couldn't have, but somebody was there who wanted her to stay human, and she doesn't know who that could have been, but somebody obviously was there to help her. Lydia and Malia are then called to Scott. Scott and the three of them are in those woods, and they're trying to find clues as to what they're looking for, because now they all feel this missing piece to them, and they're all trying to figure out what is it that they're missing. So I believe that this would probably make sense, given that the three of them are probably closest to Stiles at this point. So they're trying to figure out what's going on. Scott recalls that, there's a lot of weird things, like why was he in the woods at that day? Why did he get bit? He doesn't remember any of those things. So he he brings up the picture again, and he shows it to the girls, and then they're looking, and they're like, well, Scott says to them that he feels that he might have had a best friend. And then Malia says that she feels that the person who was with her and shackled her, that he wanted her to stay human. And then Lydia says that she's been trying to remember the same person or thing all day, and she's been trying to find out who it was. And then she goes on to say that the person or whoever's missing is somebody that she thinks she loved. Okay, so they know somebody or something's not there who should have been there, and now they're going to have to go and try to figure that out. Another interesting scene, and I think this is a very important scene to mention, is that Sheriff Stilinski is in his office. He's talking with Parrish. Parrish is investigating the helium case that we seen last episode, but now Stiles and Scott have nothing to do with it. So now it's back to the department figuring it out. Parrish is on the case. Sheriff Stilinski seems happy with him, and then Parrish tells him that Sheriff's wife is in his office waiting for him. Okay, it's kind of weird, given that, Stiles' mom has already passed at this point, which wasn't due to Stiles, so it's kind of weird that she was there. And the sheriff goes into his office. He's talking with his wife, and he's having a heart-to-heart with her, but it's kind of weird as to why she's there, and what that has to do with Stiles being gone, if it's altered it in any way, and how. It was a really weird scene, because we've never actually seen Stiles' mom alive interacting in the show, and it was really weird, but it was also very interesting. So we need to see more about how that's going to develop and why. So what's going on with Liam Mason and Corey? Well, it just so happens that Corey's chameleon abilities is enabling him to have a connection with the wild hunt. So when he sees through his supernatural powers or whatever, whoever he's touching can see with him, and he can see essentially where the Ghost Riders are. Now, they figure out that the Ghost Riders are erasing people from existence when they take them. And that is due in part to knowing this is because Corey is able to use his powers. It's a really important part that we're able to have character development with Corey, given the fact that so far he hasn't really been able to prove his worth in a pack. He hasn't really been able to show anything that he can do, because he really can't fight. He doesn't have claws, he doesn't have fangs, he just can disappear basically. But now we see that he's able to see stuff that the others can't see. Okay, so where does all good things come back to? The veterinarian shop or the clinic with Deaton, their spiritual guide through the supernatural world. So what happens? So Deaton, Lydia, Scott, and Malia are trying to figure out how they can tap into essentially Lydia's subconscious, so that they could try to have her figure out what it is they're missing. So Dean sets up an experiment with a light and whatever. He gives Lydia a paper and a pen, and she's gonna have to write down whatever it is that she's feeling or seeing at the time. So what happens? Okay, well, Lydia goes into a trance-like state, and she starts getting very erratic in her behavior, and she starts scribbling really hard on the paper. We don't know what's happening or what she's writing, but it's becoming so intense that Dean has to stop her and turn off the little light that she's looking into and bring her back to her reality. When she does so, Malia picks up the paper that Lydia scribbled on, and Scott reads out the word mischief. Now, that is going to be an important word in this season, mischief. So when the picture or the paper is seen from a faraway glance, you can see that the columns that Lydia wrote repeatedly, mischief, spells out the word Styles. And what do we get? Lydia looks up and says, "What the hell is a Styles?" So awesome, we kind of get that little flashback to the previous season when Styles shows up at Lydia's house and she doesn't really know he exists, and she's saying, "What the hell is a Styles?" So it's kind of funny. It's really interesting that happened in this episode again, but they don't know what it is or if in fact that means something to them. But that's the name that came out. Now keep in mind, it has been confirmed that the word mischief is going to play an important part in this season, and also in the identity of Styles. Now there is speculation that maybe it just might lead us to know Styles' first name, which we never actually know. They've never said it in all 6 seasons thus far what Styles' real first name is, and that all we know is that he likes to be called Styles, but he does have a different name. Things I liked about it. While I liked Corey had a lot of character development, at this point I felt that they were kind of giving everybody else, like Hayden and Liam, the attention, and Mason had the funny personality, and everybody had their character set up for them except Corey, and I felt that maybe Corey was kind of being left out. Well, in this episode we don't get that. We actually get very good character development with Corey. We find out that there's more than meets the eye, and not only can he disappear and make others disappear that he's touching, but he can see the ghost riders, he can see the ghost hunt, and he has a supernatural ability to connect to that. So that was a really good part. Overall, this episode was really great. If I had to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the greatest, I would say it was at about a 7.5. There are things that are wrong with it. There are gaps and problems I think they could fix. But overall, I think it was a really good episode. I think there was really good points that were made. It was a good foundation to start. So that'll do it for this video. Done ranting and babbling on. If you like this video, please give it a like and also subscribe to our channel. We'd really appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section. And aside from that, I'll let you guys go, and I'll see you next Teen Wolf video. Bye.